We're continuing on with 2 Chronicles 5, and this is the time when the ark is brought into the temple. The temple is completed. Solomon has done what David was in David's heart to build a temple, and God told him, no, your hands are hands of blood. Your son will do this. Your seed will do this, and Solomon does it. David had set aside all the materials for it, pretty much, but here in chapter 5, we see that all the utensils and everything that had been in the tent, the tabernacle that traveled with them, Israel, as they went through the wilderness, and that all of those things now are brought finally into the temple as the temple is completed. So this is the setting for one of the more amazing stories in the Bible. So we're going to read some of this. I'm going to start in 2 Chronicles 5 and verse 5. And it says, "And they brought up the ark of the tent of meeting, and all the holy utensils were in the tent. The Levitical priests brought them up. And King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel who were assembled with him before the ark were sacrificing so many sheep and oxen that they could not be counted or numbered." There's this incredible slaughter going on. And I don't, most of us maybe in America can't picture this very well at all. We're not usually a part of that. We go to the store and get meat in a cellophane package. We don't see the process that takes place. But I know living in northern Africa during Ramadan or just before Eid, the celebration where they all sacrifice a sheep, you go in the parking lot of your big supermarkets there, and there'd be pens of sheep just loaded up, all over the place. And I could just imagine what would be happening as you're bringing these in as a sacrifice to the Lord. You're giving that which is really valuable to you. I mean, you're giving a food source, you're giving a life source as your sacrifice to God. And here it says there were so many sheep and oxen being sacrificed that they couldn't number them. This is a bloody mess. But this is an incredible place of, well, Lord, I'm giving you what I have. I'm giving you the precious things that I have. I'm giving you life. They were so excited about the fact that God was going to come and dwell in their midst that they would give that which is valuable. And so they're doing that, and so much so that they couldn't even count them. So verse 7, "Then the priests brought the ark of the covenant of the Lord to its place, into the inner sanctuary of the house, to the Holy of Holies, under the wings of the cherubim. For the cherubim spread their wings over the place of the ark, that the cherubim made a cover over the ark and its poles." So on the ark there was these sculptures of these angels, these cherubim, and heavenly beings. I don't know if you call them angels, but heavenly beings, cherubim, and their wings were spread out across the ark. Now this is an important passage to understand in the construction of the ark. It's important to understand it because there's other references, like the reference, I get these mixed up, but either in Isaiah 14 or Ezekiel 20, I think it's Isaiah 14, when it talks of, one of those. I don't have it right in my thinking clearly right now, but it says, it's speaking to a principality that most people believe is talking about Satan. It says, "You were the cherub who covers," in a reference it's made there. And it looks like what it was made to is that the one that's addressing, which we would usually say is Satan or Lucifer, looked like he was probably initially one of the cherubim that actually covered the ark where God's presence, the heavenly ark, where God's presence would dwell. And so he was the cherub that covered. And it would make sense because it later says, "You looked at your beauty," and that kind of thing. And if you're a reflection of the glory of God, you're going to look pretty good. But if you think it's you, that's when you get deceived. If you don't realize it's really the reflection of God's glory that you're seeing, and it's not just how wonderful you are. So, but the picture here is these cherubim covering the ark, and so that's what we have here. But it's like I said, it's good to have that historical understanding so that some of the other passages that are made, and particularly that one where it says, "You were the cherub who covers," you have some kind of reference point for thinking about that. It says, "And the poles," verse 9, "were so long that the ends of the poles of the ark could be seen in front of the inner sanctuary, but they could not be seen outside. And they are there to this day." At the time of the writing of that, those poles were still there, the ark was still there. "There was nothing in the ark except the 2 tablets which Moses put there at Horeb, where the Lord made a covenant with the sons of Israel when they came out of Egypt." So the only thing in the ark of the covenant was the 10 commandments, those 2 tablets of stone. And here's what happens. They bring that in, they bring the ark in. Verse 11, this is when the things start happening. It says, and when the priests came forth from the holy place, for all the priests who were present had sanctified themselves without regard to divisions. To me, that's a verse you can preach on for a long time, is that everybody came together without regard to divisions. They weren't thinking about, well, I'm of this group, I'm of this group, I'm this kind of whatever. No, they came together for one purpose. The ark was coming into the temple. God's presence was being restored to Israel. God was favoring this nation. All of his promises were being fulfilled. This was a time, it was so incredible that they didn't care who they were. Everyone came together to glorify God. And we see this happening here. It says, verse 12, and all the Levitical singers, Asaph, Heman, Jeduthun, and their sons and kinsmen, clothed in fine linen, with cymbals, harps, and lyres, standing east of the altar, and with them 120 priests blowing trumpets. In verse 13 it says, blowing trumpets in unison, when the trumpeters and the singers were to make themselves heard with one voice to praise and to glorify the Lord. When they lifted up their voice, accompanied by trumpets and cymbals and instruments of music, and when they praised the Lord, saying, he indeed is good, for his loving kindness is everlasting, then the house of the Lord, was filled with a cloud. So I don't think, you need to notice here, they were gathered without division. They blew their trumpets in unison. They sang in one voice. They lifted up their voices together with all the instruments. There's this incredible emphasis in this about the unity of the believers as they come together to worship. And what was the thing in their heart? He's good. The Lord is good. His loving kindness is everlasting. This is the most often stated phrase in the entire Bible. And part of it is because in one psalm it mentions it in every verse. But it's praise the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy or his loving kindness is everlasting. You know, I like to break it down. It's not just kindness, it's loving kindness. That's his mercy. The Hebrew word chesed is there, which is, in some sense, it's more than just not getting what you deserve, what we call mercy, but it's really a God supply system. His mercy is a supply system to give you everything you need. It's to give everyone everything they need everywhere. His mercy is good enough to supply everyone with everything. And so here they're saying his mercy is everlasting. He's a supply system for the universe, and he's having mercy upon us, and we're in his presence right now. And so when they say this, they all in unison, they begin to worship the Lord, and they're praising him, and these trumpets are blowing with one voice. They're doing all this. When they do this, a cloud fills the temple. Okay? What's going to happen here? That would be kind of freaky, right? Cloud fills the temple where you're at. So that the priests could not stand to minister because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of God. So this is, when they do this, when there's this kind of unity, when there's this kind of praise, when there's this kind of dedication, this kind of sacrifice, giving all. You know, they brought the sheep and the oxen, so many that they couldn't even number them. And when there's this kind of coming together, when people weren't concerned about their division of who they were and their importance, everyone came together with a singular purpose. God was coming in their midst. They wanted to celebrate God is going to be in our midst. That's the only thing they cared about. And when they did that, it says the glory of God filled the temple so much that they couldn't even stand. I've pictured this and said it many times. I could just picture everyone laying on the floor, and they're looking over each other and says, he's good, isn't he? He's good. He's really good. And they can't even get up, but they're just yelling. They're just speaking to one another how good the Lord is. And it's just a united thing. That's all anyone cares about at this moment. His glory is so overriding that you can't really think about anything else. And and this was all issued in by one. They're putting God in his rightful place. He's number one. He's the center of everything they do, of their society and of the city. He's making his home in Jerusalem, where he said he would, enthroned. And it says, this is a fulfillment of the promise that he gave to David, that your son would build a house, and it's been built and it's dedicated. Everyone comes together playing trumpets and cymbals and guitars, and they're all praising God in one voice, saying essentially the same thing. There's not a division as, oh, well, that's not really what God's like. They've come to a conclusion. He's good, and his mercy is forever. And as they do that, the glory of the Lord fills the house, and we'll pick up there when we start next time.